Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here with us today for our Leading Wellbeing webinar. This event is provided by Advocates for Human Potential and supported by a SAMHSA Emergency COVID-19 grant to the Illinois Department of Human Services Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery. AHP is a technical assistance training and consultation firm. We work with behavioral health organizations, medical organizations, local, state, and federal governments. And we help those organizations strengthen their behavioral health service delivery and social service delivery. We do that through trainings to build competencies around things like homelessness and trauma-informed care and well-being. And we also help organizations engage in strategic planning, develop workflows, and address areas to improve their overall operations. This funding has helped us develop the Center for Wellbeing at Work. The center is a clearinghouse and technical assistance center aimed at supporting the middle manager at behavioral health organizations in strengthening well-being in the workplace. We provide technical assistance to folks in this space, and we offer lots of tools and strategies on our website. We're going to demo that for you a little bit later. So here's our Leading Wellbeing team. There are lots of folks who aren't included here on the slide who provide a ton of support behind the scenes, including Beth and Tony, who are tech support today, and we're grateful to them for all the support they've provided us in launching the center. And with me in terms of presenters, you'll hear from myself, Tara Fisher, Senior Program Manager at AHP, Phil Rayner, who's a Senior Program Associate, Ellen Radis, also a Senior Program Manager, Chantal LaPearl, Senior Program Manager, and Alejandra Acuna, also a Senior Program Manager. Collectively, we have lots of experience in providing clinical care, behavioral health treatment, as well as leading behavioral health programs and organizations. We have experience and expertise in integrated care, integrating behavioral health care into primary care, expertise in trauma-informed care, working with families and children, and some expertise also in human resources. So we'll bring all of that bear to today's training. So we'd love to hear about you. We're really wondering who's with us today. So if we could go ahead and launch our poll, please take a minute and let us know. Are you a manager or supervisor, executive? Are you a clinician, counselor, a peer, medical profession, in the medical profession, or something else? And if it's something else, we'd welcome you noting what that is in the chat. We'd love to hear what other types of professions are here. Looks like we've got 86% participation. Could we get up to 90? Maybe a couple of more people chime in here. Let's get it up there. Almost 80, 87, 88. A little bit higher, 89.
Let's go to 92.
90, we're at 90. All right, Chantal. A couple of more people to get us to 92.
92. There we go, 91.
91. Oh, we're so close. 92. Nice. Excellent. Thank you all for chiming in there and participating. So we've got a lot of managers and supervisors where 60% of folks attending are in that camp. We also have some executives, and then we have a few clinicians, a few peer support folks, and then some folks in the other category. It looks like, according to the chat, we've got some case managers, assistant program director, systems integration and support coordinator for the Department of Mental Health, trainer for clinicians and supervisors, statewide coordinator. So a wide range of folks. And this is fantastic. You know, it makes a lot of sense that we have the most managers and supervisors. That's who we targeted when we did our advertising for this. But to have clinicians, peer support people, and other folks in other aspects of the behavioral health system is really critical. And we're happy to have you here as champions of well-being as well. And there'll be lots of great information, I think, for everyone to get a little something from in today's presentation. While folks have that chat going, it seems like people are starting to chime in and interact. I'd love to also invite you to let us know what state you're in. If you want to just quickly throw that in the chat. I'm really curious. We're providing this nationally, so folks can see, take a look at the chat and see how we've got people from all over. This is fantastic. Very excited to have you all here from across the nation. Today's agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we're all here together. We'll discuss the 4 pillars of leading well-being that we've developed. And we'll do a little demo for you of some of the tools and resources on our website. And then we'll wrap things up. We're going to spend 60 minutes together. So first of all, we want to talk with you about our collective compassionate agreement. So this is how we're going to be today with one another. We want to invite you to come into the Zoom room and be really present. So I encourage you to shut off your Teams notifications, any chat apps that you have going on, to put them on Do Not Disturb, to shut down your email, silence your phone, to really give yourself this time to be here with your colleagues and in us, and getting some knowledge and information and support in the work that you are doing. Really be present. We also want to encourage you to be brave. So we may ask you to engage in some reflection or an activity or share an experience. And we really hope you lean into that. Really be brave. Put yourself out there and share. We want to think of ourselves as all teachers and learners here, right? We're all on this path together of well-being, and you have things to offer. And I encourage you to share ideas and experiences that you've had in the chat with your colleagues and learn from one another. Any lessons learned, any examples that you may be implementing in your organization. Please do share them, because you're also teachers. And of course, keep an open mind to being also a learner from not only us, learning from us, but also learning from one another. Suspend judgment. So, you know, sometimes it's automatic. We start to judge something someone's saying. And we really encourage you, if that happens, to notice it coming up in your body, to pause, and to try to give that person a little grace. Maybe also try to give yourself a little grace. So maybe you're judging yourself. You've said something, or you made a comment and you wish you didn't say that. It goes that way too. So giving yourself a little grace, you know, really understanding that people are trying to do the best that they can. Allow everyone to have their own experience. So when you do share in the chat, or you come off the mute and share verbally, please, you know, just speak from your own experience and don't speak for others. And then, of course, if you feel like you need a break at any time, definitely take a break. So why are we here? Why am I here? Why are my teammates here? Why are you here? Seriously, why are you here? Why did you show up? Why did you decide to come to today's presentation? What made you tune in, click the link, decide I want to do this? Where are you at? Why are you here? I invite folks to share that with one another in the chat as we move forward. Just take a minute, think about, why am I here? Why is this important to me? We've got some folks starting to chime in the chat. gain knowledge and benefit our staff. Our staff are stressed out, become a better supervisor, help others in my company. New to supervisory role, fantastic. And thinking about boundaries, that's wonderful. To help staff who are overworked. So keep going, keep sharing with one another. I'm going to keep going, but you keep sharing and check the chat and watch what people are saying. So one thing that brings us all together is that the workplace is suffering, right, in the wake of COVID. You can see it as people write in the chat that folks are struggling, folks are feeling burnt out. And when we prepared to launch the Center for Wellbeing at Work, we did a fair amount of research. And what we noticed was that what folks were thinking, what many organizations were thinking were recruitment and retention problems, actually turned out to be employee well-being problems. So consider some of these statistics. A staggering 80% of employees say they're stressed at work and need help managing it. 80% in one study. Another study showed that over 60% of employees said that productivity was affecting their mental health, and that a third thought the workplace environment actually contributed to it, so that the environment at work itself was not healthy for them and not a place of well-being. And subsequently, people were leaving the company. Untreated mental illness can cost some companies up to billions of dollars, $3 billion in this particular example, in this particular report, but it can be very expensive for organizations when their staff are suffering. 1 in 4 people name work as the biggest stressor in their life. 1 in 4. So what does this mean for us as leaders and managers of our hurting workforce? Well, first, we're part of that workforce too. You're part of that workforce too. You might be hurting too. You've gone through this pandemic as well. And maybe you're also thinking about leaving your position. You're thinking about it being an unhealthy work environment. You might be experiencing some of those same things that your staff are. And so, you know, that saying on airplanes where they tell you put on your own oxygen mask before you help others put on theirs, you know, that analogy really applies for us. We as leaders, it's our time. It's our time to really focus on ourselves. To do this is critical for leading well-being, right? So it's so important for us to take some time, think about how we're doing before we can actually support other people in their own well-being in the workplace. So what does it mean to take a look at ourselves as we also try to support our staff in well-being? We've developed these 4 core areas or 4 pillars of leading well-being. And this is based on a great deal of research that we've done, as well as actual experience throughout the state of Illinois, in particular, consulting with organizations for the last couple of years during COVID. And we boiled it down to these 4 particular pillars. There are other aspects of leading well-being as well, but these felt like really foundational pieces that were important for organizations to start with. So the first is leading from the inside out. We also have be a beacon of belonging. So that's signaling belonging to staff, activating personal agency for staff, and taming excessive work demands. So what do we mean by all of this? Well, when we're leading from the inside out, we're taking a look at our own level of self-awareness, our own insight into our behaviors, our emotions. We're managing ourselves, managing our emotions, our anger. We're communicating well with staff. We're building relationships. We're attuning to others, paying attention to the emotion people are experiencing and speaking to that, not just what they're saying. We're being inclusive. We're thinking about how we can raise up the voice of our teammates. We're creating psychological safety, trust in the workplace environment, making it okay to make mistakes and things like that. Activating agency, we're really supporting staff in having the confidence to actually have that autonomy that so many of them are seeking, right? A lot of folks want control over their work as much as possible. And sometimes as leaders, we're a little hesitant to give it to them. We don't quite trust yet that they have the ability, right? So there are certain things we can work on with staff, we can look for, and then we can also promote and work on with them so that they are set up for success as we delegate things to them and we give them more autonomy. And so these are things like fostering intentionality, really working with the staff on developing that skill of being intentional about what they're going to execute, how they're going to do it, promoting their ability to anticipate how things are going to go, what bumps they might have along the way, encouraging action, actually acting and follow through, and then of course reflecting on the progress and the experience and the bumps that may occur. And then lastly, taming excessive work demands. So in order for us to be able to be present and have space to lead from the inside out and signal belonging and activate agency, we really need to tame some of those excessive work demands because they can overwhelm our energy. And so to do this, we focus on noticing the different patterns in work, assess the workload, and address excessive work demands. So we strongly believe that there are small things you can do, little ways that you can engage differently day to day or week by week with your staff. And we're going to talk through some of those examples and dig into each of these 4 pillars a little bit more as we go forward. Before we do that, I want to open it up and see what people think. Where are you at? What are you doing currently to support workplace well-being? So, if you're doing some big initiative at your organization, that's fantastic. But we're also thinking about those little things that I had mentioned. There are ways that maybe we intervene differently. For example, we have a podcast, and recently we interviewed someone who talked a little bit about how at the end of the week, she sends out an email to all of her staff that talks about a gratitude, something she's grateful for. She says something that is an update for the staff to know about, and something that's oriented around a plan of, things that they need to do. And so she has this great transparency practice that she's established with them. And so I'm curious, what are other folks doing? If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, I think folks would like to see, and there could be some cross-fertilization here, right? Across the states and everyone participating. What kind of strategies do you use to help support well-being, to help strengthen your staff? One of the other, here are some examples. Great. So we've got some folks in the chat now, creating a safe space to talk, problem solving, buying donuts. People do like food. Meditating, staff development and wellness plan. I try to share a small bit of feedback, positive feedback each week. Offering encouraging flex time, training opportunities. Wow, keep this coming. This is great. Everyone take a look at this, take note at it. You might get some tips and ideas. This is fantastic. Keep going, keep sharing. So we're going to share with you a little bit about the 4 pillars in greater detail. So I'll talk a little bit about the leading well-being from inside out pillar. Chantal will talk about activating agency. Alejandra will talk about be a beacon of belonging. And then Phil will wrap things up with taming excessive work demands. So what do we mean by leading from the inside out? Well, we think of three core areas here. The first is examining your leadership style. So thinking about who you are as a leader, your skills, how you show up, how you want to show up, harnessing your emotional intelligence. So thinking about your self-awareness, your self-management, those pieces that were on that previous slide. And then developing a leading well-being plan. So taking everything you know about yourself and thinking about, what are some areas that you want to strengthen and actually putting a plan behind it. So let's do a little bit of this self-awareness and this assessing your leadership style. All right, let's think for a second here. Why does your team follow you? Why do they do the things that you ask them to do? Is it because they have to? Oftentimes for new leaders, that's the case. People don't quite know you yet. People might not trust you yet. So they're just kind of going along because they know they kind of have to, and they're following along. Sometimes people follow us because they really like us. They like us as people. They see themselves in us. Sometimes they follow us because we have a really productive track record. We get things done and they like to be part of a successful team. Sometimes people follow us because we've helped them grow. We've developed them. We see their strengths and we help them strengthen their weaknesses. And sometimes people follow us because we've inspired them, because they see what they want to be and what they want to strive for in you. And they feel inspired by the work that you're doing, the passion that you have. So think for a second about why your team is following you. I know some people have mentioned it in the chat. Just think for a second. We're going to go ahead and launch the poll. And I really want people to be brave here and participate. This is totally anonymous, right? Be honest with yourself. Why do you think people are following you? There's no right or wrong answer here. There's no shame in any of it. It just is. It's a reflective point for you to consider. Why do you think? Why do you think people might be following you? Got lots of people selecting. We've got about 70% participation. Let's see if we can get it up a little bit higher. All right, we're at 79. Let's see if we can get it to 80. All right, 80%. Let's keep going, keep responding for those who haven't responded, but I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the results. So we see that 32% of folks say that it's because of what I stand for and how I inspire others. 23% say it's because of how I help them grow. 17 say it's because of my productive track record. I'm someone who gets things done. 15% say because they have to. They maybe don't know too much about me, or maybe, there are other reasons, but it's because they have to. And then 12% say because they like me, because there's something about me that resonates with them. So this is great. Now you have a little sense of why you think your staff might be following you. So let me ask you this. What is the evidence for this? The item you just selected. What's the evidence for that? However you responded, how do you know that to be true? I want to invite you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, or open up OneNote or a Word doc and just reflect on this for a second. People, you can share in the chat, that's fantastic. but also take note of it, jot it down for yourself. How do you know this to be true? Just take a second and reflect. Where's the evidence? What do you see in yourself? What do you see in your staff that tells you you're this type of leader or that type of leader, or they're following you for a particular reason? Where's the evidence? So one way to grow our leadership style from whatever point you're at, if you want to continue to grow as a leader, one way to do that is to harness your emotional intelligence, right? That's the second aspect of this particular pillar. And what does that mean? That means cultivating self-awareness, which we're starting to do right now with this reflection, managing oneself, attuning to others, building relationships. You've heard me talk a little bit about all of these. But what does that actually look like in practice? So if you're trying to cultivate your self-awareness, some things to ask yourself, can I really actually describe my leadership style? Can I articulate it? Do I see patterns of how I lead? Do I have a sense of how my style impacts my employees, my team? Can I describe different aspects of the ways I'm most proficient or least proficient in leading? Do I regularly consider my impact on others as a leader? If I'm thinking about how do I manage myself, some things I might ask: do I stay calm and level-headed in difficult situations? Do I refrain from acting in ways that are outside my values? Do I make a point to explain the why behind decisions and requests? Like the example of the woman who was sending the emails at the end of the week, she's making a point to share, to be transparent, to let her staff know what the plans are, the things that are going on and why they're happening. Do I keep my team in the loop, right? She's keeping her team in the loop. Can I change my opinions based on new information, new circumstances, or do I get stuck with the decision I had made simply because I feel like I can't now change my mind? It's going to make me look bad if I change my mind, even though I have information that enriches my perspective and changes it. Can I actually change my opinion publicly with others? And then in terms of attuning, so you're attuning, do you try to get a sense of others' emotions and really understand what might be going on for them? Discussing strategies around burnout with them, giving them opportunities to be heard. And if you're building relationships, are you noticing and recognizing, your team's strengths and seeing their potential? And when it comes to conflict, do you recognize that conflict is happening and address it as quickly as possible to resolve disagreements and repair relationships with team members as soon as you can? So lastly, I want to leave you with this. On that piece of paper or that Word doc, whatever you have, write these two questions down. How do I want to show up or engage differently as a leader? And what is one thing I can start doing this week? I encourage you to spend the rest of our time as you're listening to the other presentations, reflecting on these questions. Spend a little time now answering it and continue to come back to this as you hear other folks talk. And if you come up with a whole list of things you can start doing, that's fantastic. At the end of this, you can prioritize them and start trying them, chipping away one by one. Keep this close by and keep reflecting. I'm going to hand it off to Chantel.
All right. Thank you, Tara. You gave us lots to think about. So I'm going to go over activating agency. And you're probably wondering, what exactly does that mean? Tara did a pretty nice overview in the beginning of this presentation, but I wanted to go over what the terms actually meant. So to activate, which many of you probably already know, means to make active or operative. And agency, which has so many different meanings, but in our case, we're talking about The definition of agency as the ability of an individual or a group to choose to act with purpose. So when you put the two together and you're like, what does activate agency mean for me as a leader, as far as leading well-being in my organization? It's really looking at two key components. Does your staff have the ability to act and the courage to act in the face of a difficult or uncertain situation, such as going through a global pandemic or even in your day-to-day work? So I'm going to dive into a little bit of this just so you can understand how to operate activating agency within your organization. So to activate agency in your staff or your employees, it's really important to look at yourselves first. I'm kind of tailing off what Tara already said about self-awareness and heightening your self-awareness, but some of the key areas to look at when you're looking at yourself, as well as when you're looking to your employees, is intentionality, anticipation, action, and self-reflection. So when looking at how intentional are you at setting goals or committing to acting? How intentional are your staff? Anticipation. Do you take time to anticipate steps on what it's going to take to reach your goal? Does your staff do that? Action. Do you take the initiative to act? Do you feel like your staff has that initiative to act and feel like they're able to act? And of course, self-reflection. Do you take time to think about what possible obstacles or barriers that could affect reaching your goal? And these are things that you can look at throughout your life, not just in your work life, because clearly what you bring to work is yourself, right? Your authentic self. So looking at intentionality, anticipation, action, and self-reflection across the board is important for you as you kind of dive in to your own self-awareness as a leader. So let's talk a little bit about activating agency within your organization as a twofold process. So learning to cultivate agency in yourself and also learning to cultivate agency in your team. So what does that look like? So when you're looking to cultivate agency in yourself, you really need to look at how you show up. So what brings you to work every day? What steps do you take throughout your day that bring you more well-being for your team, your organization? And really increasing your self-awareness is key to activating your own agency. And we're going to do an exercise in this portion of the webinar today that's going to hopefully bring you a little more self-awareness. If you haven't already done a lot of the work yourselves as leaders, which you probably have. And then really looking to learning how to cultivate agency in your team. So, looking to build a workplace that supports autonomy, things to consider: being more flexible with how, when, and where your staff work. One of the most important things in cultivating agency amongst your team is trust. So what kind of things are you doing in your day-to-day to establish trust with your team? And of course, trust happens over time. It doesn't happen overnight. So really looking at the small things that you do on a daily basis that just make your team feel like they are trusted. So if you look at cultivating your own agency through self-awareness, one of the tools that I often refer to and recommend highly is looking at some of the daring leadership work that Brené Brown has done. Specifically, I've pulled from her Dare to Lead series, her book. Highly recommend reading or listening to her book. She also has a website full of resources. So as leaders, you can, tap into the Dare to Lead portal that she has and find a lot of tools for you to use. But she really talks about the 4 skills of courageous leadership. So this is really about helping you become more self-aware on how you are as a leader. I know Tara talked about understanding your leadership style. So this is really a place where you can dig into what am I like as a leader? And some of the four key areas that she talks about are how you rumble with vulnerability, your willingness and ability to rumble with being vulnerable, living into your values, right? Understanding what your core values are, having a strong sense of the behaviors that align to that, how you recognize your values and how you recognize how it impacts your work, trust. So building trust with your team, how you build trust, and of course, learning to rise, right? It's sometimes not about how you rise, but really how you rise after you fail or you fall. So really picking yourself back up and learning how to rise gracefully. And like Tara said, giving yourself some grace while you do it, because everybody falls. So I would highly recommend this resource. But what I'd like to dig into a little bit in the time that we have today is living into your values, because I think that's an important aspect of this. So what does that look like? So a value is defined as a way of being or believing that we hold most important. Living into our values means that we do more than just profess our values. We actually practice them. We walk the talk. And when we're clear about our values or what we hold important, we can ensure that our words, thoughts, intentions, and our behaviors align with those values. Because I'm sure you all know what it feels like to operate outside your values. It's not a good feeling. So learning to name your values and be able to say, wait a minute, I think I'm outside my values, which is why I'm feeling a little off right now. So we're going to do a values exercise. It's 2 minutes, 2 values. I know this would take a lot longer. I actually went through the exercise myself last night, trying to see if my values were aligned as the same way they were a couple of years ago. And it was hard. So I'm going to ask you to look at a list of values, and your task is to pick 2 that you hold most important. It's not easy. But I want you to pick the 2 that you relate to the most, the 2 that stand out to you the most, and see if it brings you any clarity. So I'm going to start the timer for 2 minutes. Maybe we'll do 1 because I think our time's a little short today. So let's just do 1 minute. So I'm going to give you 1 minute. So take a look at this list of values. I want you to pick 2. You can chat them in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that. You can just write them down. If you already know what they are and you don't need to look at this list, write them down. You really can't lean into anything that you can't name. So my hope is that you can name your values in the next minute. And I want you to really kind of step away from the ones that are obvious, the ones that maybe you've been coached in the past to embrace. I want you to really look at, what am I living in when I'm showing up as my best self? Which values speak to me? Which values get me through hard times? Which ones do I lean on? I'm seeing a lot of chat. I love it. Accountability, wholeheartedness, dignity, honesty, balance, kindness, grace, family, teamwork. I love it. Keep chatting. I love how you guys can come up with it so quickly. I'm down to 8 and I need to get down to 2, but you guys are doing a great job. All right, I think you guys keep chatting. I'm going to keep going so I can give time to my teammates to do their portions, but I really appreciate your engagement in this. So I want you to kind of walk away and think about this. What are the 2 values that you chose today? And how do they affect the work that you do? Do they become a lens through which you make decisions? How do they impact how you lead your team? How do they impact how you take care of yourself? The modeling that you do for your team? All things that are really important to think about as you think about your 2 values and what you impart on your team and how you show up every day. So I'm going to turn it over to Alejandra.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tara. That was great. You definitely got me thinking. I'm sorry, Chantal. You definitely got me thinking. I'd like to transition to the pillar, be a beacon of belonging, by starting off with asking the group, what's your why? When you think about belonging in the workplace, what inspires you to be a beacon of belonging? And why does it matter? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to type it in the chat. I love it, making people's lives better. I'm here for staff and I love the work we do. Positive difference for just one person. Thank you. I love the engagement. I love the sharing of ideas. I think, as was said earlier, we learn from each other and we're inspired by each other, which is why we're all here doing this and talking about this. I feel like it feels good to talk about this. I'd like to just give you a really high-level overview of being a beacon of belonging. We will address this pillar and all the pillars more deeply in upcoming sessions. So I just want to give you a high-level overview so you know what's coming. So kind of entice you to the website and the resources that are found there and entice you to the upcoming workshops. So this content comes from the Small Steps to Inclusion tip sheet, which is on the website. And it really highlights ways that being inclusive can look like, how can show up in the workplace. So it includes things like lifting voices, amplifying the voices of people on your team, strengthening feedback, promoting respect, and practicing inclusive empathy. And if you are like, I really want to know what those things mean, what they look like, how to do them in the workplace, then I invite you to the website and to the upcoming workshops. In terms of cultivating a culture of psychological safety, this is really key. It's sort of the foundation. And I feel like we've all been talking about, Tara, Chantal, and I, we're all talking about trust and how trust is the foundation of relationships, including work relationships. And so some things that we know lead to or foster or engender trust are communication. So transparency, swift conflict resolution. Even if our own personal conflict resolution style tends to be a bit avoidant, in the workplace, addressing things sooner than later, in fact, swiftly, is better off for relationships and the work. I wanted to add that you're already talking about this stuff. So I was looking through the chat and people were offering things that they are already doing in the workplace that engender a culture of psychological safety. So Donna mentioned meeting weekly to check in and offer care and concern for staff. I love that. Like making a commitment to a time commitment. It's not, we're all very busy, but this is just as important. Trying to be solution focused when there are concerns presented and making staff feel comfortable addressing their concerns. So the idea is that people's feelings, people's comfortability is also important. Diane offered, we start management meetings with success stories and kudos for staff. And who wouldn't want to start the day with kudos and success stories? And I love Rob mentioned providing one-to-one safe space to talk and share. So the psychological safety could be in individual settings, one-on-one, as well as in small group or larger group settings. So people feel much more comfortable sharing their concerns in a smaller group. So these are just some ideas. They're in the chat. I encourage you, if you look at the chat box, there's 3 buttons next to the happy face where you can click on Save Chat. And so if you want to download when we're done, all the beautiful ideas, the great ideas that people have offered, you can do that by saving the chat. And then next slide. So just for focus and fun, because you're getting a lot of information, I invite you to pick one of the points in either psychological safety or inclusion to focus on in the next few weeks. When we laser focus our time and energy, really amazing things happen. So just for fun and focus, go ahead and pick one that you would be willing to commit to in the next few weeks, and then type it in the chat. This is like a public, I publicly claim this pillar, priority, activity, etc. So go ahead and type it in the chat from the list, from this list. Because really the road to far, far away comes with beginning with the first step. And most of us can manage baby steps or incremental steps or small steps. So thank you for participating by typing in the chat. I really appreciate you signaling your commitment to focusing on this. And then finally, I just want to highlight that on the website, there are tools and resources available for this pillar: small steps to inclusion tip sheet, the collective compassionate agreement, psychological safety guideposts, and finally, what you see on the screen now is an excerpt from Supervising with the Wellbeing Lens infographic. So that's it. That's my high-level overview of being a beacon and belonging. Hopefully that entices you to the website, resources, and also to the upcoming webinar. And now I'd like to hand it over to, okay, now I'd like to hand it over to Phil, and what I hear are his smooth stylings on the
Thank you. Thanks, Alejandra. I think you and I were competing over moving that next slide. So I know we're getting a little short on time, so I'm going to move us along. But we do need to talk about the reality of taming excessive work demands. And I know this is a particularly hard thing to talk about right now because many of us are dealing with smaller staffing levels than we would like to have on our teams and still trying to get all the work done, which can be a real rock and a hard place kind of a situation to be in. But if we're going to begin to tame excessive work demands, we have to begin by noticing. Many times when we're so busy with trying to reach the outcomes that we're trying to achieve and that we may be mandated to achieve, we can lose track of how the work level is just creeping up and people are starting to get more involved in working a little after hours or weekends, holidays, and suddenly it's become the culture of the organization. And so it's urgently important that we're able to notice. We need to assess the workload. We need to address the excessive demands. So I have a quick poll for you. Signs of an excessive workload can include increased stress and burnout, declining work performance, increased physical health problems, increased mental health problems, or all the above. And I want to get as many people as we can. If we can get as close to 100%, oh, I love it. We are getting people on there. Very nice.
Can I just point out that the only option being chosen?
I see that. Yeah. Well, clearly we have a brilliant crowd here.
Yeah.
And declining work performance. Yeah, great. Increased stress and burnout. Sure. Very good. So let's try to get to 80% as long as we're going at it. We'll keep going. We need like one more person. All right, well, let's call it. It's 79%. There we go. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we have, 94% saying all of the above, and 4% increased stress and burnout, declining work performance, 2%. Absolutely. Brilliant crowd, all of these. And, you know, it's clear that we're aware of this. And yet, when we look across workplaces across the country, and certainly in healthcare, we see a lot of this happening anyway. And so even though we know it's an issue, it's something that we're still struggling mightily to manage and address. So in regard to noticing excessive work, we're focused on meeting performance goals, and we can get so focused that we miss what's right in front of us, even though we know what it looks like. These are some things that we should be on the lookout for. Frequent use of overtime, people missing important personal and family events, declining morale around the office or on our teams. When we start to see emotional outbursts among team members, the tension builds and we have a tendency to take it out on one another. Increased illnesses, increased absenteeism, and presenteeism. Just to speak for a moment about presenteeism, many times people feel an obligation or necessity to come into the office even when they're ill, even when they're really not able to perform their jobs. And so when they come in, but they're not performing, or even creating safety and risk factors in the workplace because they're not well, we call that presenteeism. And that's another issue that often escalates when people are experiencing excessive work. And then physical and emotional exhaustion, which we can see in the workplace and experience ourselves. In order to be aware of this and where your teams are at, assessment is really a key. There are many, many ways we can do it. I just love this line from Peter Drucker. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. We have to really be looking at what's going on. That can be through one-on-one discussions, team meetings, staff surveys, formal assessments, observation. There's that wonderful idea of management by walking around. What's going on? What do you see? And when you have a lot of your workforce working remotely, that's not as easy to do. We have to be in touch with each other. And looking at timesheet data, all can be good indicators of what's happening on the team. And to refer back to what everyone has talked about so far, when we are having those one-on-one discussions, we have to communicate, which means we have to listen as well as share our ideas. So really active listening. We have to institute time for renewal. I know it's hard right now because so many teams are short-staffed, but without time to rest and refresh and renew, people just are not able to perform. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, it's been around forever, it's often quoted, talks about the necessity of people having daily time for renewal, rest, and reflection. Daily, looking at physical, spiritual, mental, social, and emotional renewal. Without that, we just deteriorate. We're not able to do. And so the chronic overwork that we have in our organizations creates the underperformance that the organizations are trying to overcome. And so you can see the vicious cycle of that. The only way to really exit that is by giving people the time that they need for rest and reflection and renewal. And I will turn this over to Ellen.
Hi, thank you, Phil. I'm going to do a very brief demo of the website in our last 5 minutes. So hold on a second and I will get there. Okay, here is our, oops, I didn't share. Sorry, guys. Okay, I think all you guys are, everyone's able to see the, I don't think so. Oh,
You're good now.
Yep.
Okay, good. It didn't seem like it was working. Okay, so Tara, Chantal, Phil, and Alejandra have all mentioned our website. So this is it. It's wellbeingforworking.com. We've dropped that link into the chat. And on this website, we have a lot of the resources that have been talked about and some others. So I just wanted to just give you a very quick overview. But if you scroll down here, we talk about our 4 pillars of leading well-being from the inside out, being a beacon of belonging, activating agency and taming excessive work demands. And then under each one, you can see I just clicked on taming excessive work demands, and we have some more information about that, and then some resources which you can open and download and use. So we have these resources for each of the pillars, each of the areas we just talked about. So some of them we've talked about during the webinar, and there are others that we haven't talked about, but I encourage you all to go and explore the resources. We have what I like to call the vital few resources. We've really tried not to overwhelm you and put 25 or 30 resources for each area, but to really think about between 4 and 6 that would be really useful to you and help you implement a lot of the things we've been talking about today. And then the last thing, just before we wrap up, I wanted to point out, I'm going to go back to the homepage. And you may have noticed here, there's a book of free consults, and any of you are can do this. And basically it'll book a consultation, a half-hour consultation with one of us on the team that is presented today. And you can see when you hit book a consult, it'll come up with this calendar. You can pick a date, and then it shows you the available times. If you click through all of this, it will send you an invitation, and it'll hook up with one of, this system talks to our calendars, finds one of us that is available at that time, and we'll book you for a consultation. So it'll be a half an hour, and during that time we'll work with you, assess where you're at, and hopefully be able to give you some resources or some guidance and around well-being in your workplace. So we are literally just up to the hour. One other thing I just wanted to notice for you guys to notice, under contact us in the website, there's also sign up for updates. So this will get you on our sort of newsletter, more webinars, things like that come out, that you'll be able to be on this mailing list if you want to do that. And I just want to remind folks, if you haven't listened to it already, we do have a podcast called Caring for Caregivers, your life support podcast. And Bill is our host and brings in all kinds of really interesting people to talk about well-being in the workplace. And I think that's about it. We just about run out of time. Tara, I wanted to just send it back to you for a wrap up, or I can do it myself, either way.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ellen. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We do have an evaluation. We'd love to get your feedback on today's presentation, and please do take a minute. We're dropping that link to the evaluation in the chat. Please do take a minute before you leave to fill that out. Your feedback would be tremendously helpful. And there's also a little demographic section where we just want to learn more about you all and how you found us and things like that. So this information will be really useful to us in reporting back to our funders. As many of you know, you probably have similar reporting requirements, so that'll be helpful. And then we'll also be able to take that information and strengthen our programs, strengthen the resources and the tools that we develop for you going forward. And certainly, if anyone has any questions, we're out of time, but you can email us if the tech folks wouldn't mind putting our email in the chat. You can certainly email us with questions as well, or hop on the website and you can get the email address there. Thanks so much. Oh,
I was just going to say, we will be sending out the slides as well to everyone on the who attended. So thank you. Sorry about that. It just lots of questions about that.
That's all right. No worries. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Take good care and be well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.